What is going on, everyone? It is Connor, your host with the most, back with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And on today's episode, we're going to be going over the third quarter power rankings for the NFL. We've done this twice before. We did this after week 4. That was the first quarter. After week 8 was the second quarter. And then now here we are after week 12, and this will be the third quarter of the NFL season power rankings. So basically, there's going to be looking at the sheets here. These we're going to go around the shield, and these basically the way these power rankings work is that the 32 teams have been broken up into 3 tiers. There is the bottom tier, which is teams 21 through 32. You have the middle tier, which is teams 11 through 20, and then of course the top tier is the top 10 teams. So if you're looking here, basically we have a little bit less movement this time than we did last time in the power rankings. Last time there was a lot of double-digit movers when it came to where they were in the previous power rankings. This time there's only 2. There are some teams that actually are in the same spots. I'll go through and do a quick look through here. You guys can see the rankings as they are right now. I'm going to be going through them. But overall, less movement in the power rankings than the first time for week 8, which I guess is to be expected because now the teams are, we're starting to really figure out who are the good teams and who are the bad teams. Whereas, there was a lot of craziness that was happening in the first 4 weeks of the season, which is why when I did these week 8 power rankings, there was a lot of movement happening around. So there was a lot of teams that were up 9 or down 9 or up there were some teams that were 15 spots different than they were in week 4. So definitely a lot less movement this time. But what I'm going to be doing for each of these tiers, if you guys haven't seen one of these episodes before, basically going to go over the teams in the tier. I'm going to be picking out a couple, one team to highlight from each tier. And then I'm going to be looking at, for each tier, one team that I think will be staying in the tier, one team that I don't think will be able to climb out, and then one team that I think that will be able to climb out. Of course, for the upper tier, there's only going to be a team that I think could, there's not going to be a team climbing out of that tier. It's just going to be a team that could fall out of that tier, and then a team that I think will stay there. So let's get right into it here, though. So we've got our lower tier this time. So at number 32, as they have been in all 3 editions of the power rankings, are going to be the Houston Texans. Their position has not changed throughout the entire power rankings. I don't think anyone's surprised by this. The Texans are a bit of a dumpster fire. At number 31, we have the defending Super Bowl champion LA Rams, down 8 spots from their previous appearance. At number 30, we have the Denver Broncos, who are down 6 spots. At number 29, we have the Chicago Bears that are down 2 spots. At number 28, we have the New Orleans Saints, our biggest dropper in this set of the power rankings. They're down 10 spots from their previous ranking. At number 27, we have the Carolina Panthers, who are down 2 spots. At number 26, we have the Indianapolis Colts, who are in the same spot as they were last time. At number 25, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who are up 5 spots. At number 24, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are up 4 spots. At number 23, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are up 6 spots. At number 22, the Arizona Cardinals, who are in the same spot as they were last time. And at number 21, we have the Green Bay Packers, who are down 2 spots from last time. So the team I'm going to be highlighting here is going to be the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints, this is the team that, I was kind of skeptical of going into the season. I was skeptical of how good they were going to be. I know Eric did our team preview on the Saints, and he had pretty high hopes for them. I thought that there was certainly a potential that they could do well, but I wasn't sure how I thought they really stacked up to the other teams in the NFC South. But, I thought, okay, this is the team, they've got Jameis Winston at quarterback. He's solid. He's pretty good. I mean, he's a serviceable starter. I'm not sure I would call him maybe good per se, but he's a serviceable starter. Alvin Kamara is the best dual threat running back in the league. They were going to be getting Michael Thomas back from injury. They had traded for Jarvis Landry from Cleveland. They drafted Chris Olave in the first round. He was, one of the top wide receiver prospects. The offense was looking up, and the defense had always been the strength of this team. But this Saints team, they pulled off a win against the Raiders all the way back in week 9, and they've been on a 4-game losing streak since. Well, they've only won one of their last 4 games since then. For a second there, I was like, what? No. They did beat the Rams, but, they had a pretty bad loss to the Ravens, pretty bad loss to the Steelers where they were just kind of looking incompetent. And then, they had another bad loss to the 49ers this past week where they got shut out. So not looking good for the Saints here. And then the biggest thing for me with the Saints, though, obviously their season has, really fallen apart when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. Michael Thomas, once again, with a season-ending injury, he's done for the year. Jarvis Landry has just been consistently hurt. He hasn't had any consistent playing time. It's really just been Chris Olave, which, credit to them. Chris Olave, in my mind, he's definitely a front runner for the offensive rookie of the year right now. He's been a really good, it's definitely looking like that they, did a good job in trading up for him, that it was well worth it. Kamara, he hasn't really been his usual explosive self. He's been good, but, Alvin Kamara has always been one of these guys that, you take in the first round. If for all you fantasy football players out there, you always take him in the first round. And, he really hasn't proven to be like a first round fantasy prospect. I know he didn't really get taken in the first round this year just because a lot of people thought he might get suspended before the season started. But that didn't end up happening. But, this offense just hasn't looked good. And really probably the biggest mind-blowing thing for me, their defense has been good. But the biggest mind-blowing thing for me is, at the start of the year, Jameis Winston, he had a bunch of shoulder and back problems and he wasn't playing well. So they decided, okay, he needs to go on IR, he needs time to recover, which is fine, give the guy some time to recover, let him, because shoulder and back injuries, when you're a quarterback, having something like that is really not good. It really can affect your performance. So, definitely a good idea to just kind of let him rest, let him recover. But he's been healthy now for a couple of weeks. And, and yet Dennis Allen has still decided that he wants to roll with Andy Dalton as his QB, which in my mind is completely baffling. I don't know why you'd ever want to, have Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback right now. Having him as a backup is great. He can come in for a few games and, do a decent job for you and be fine. But having him as the starter, I don't understand the logic behind that at all, especially when Winston's supposedly healthy now. Winston, he's got more upside to him. And the other thing with Winston is the Saints are trying to figure out if he's going to be their starting quarterback going forward. And it's I'm not sure how you're going to evaluate if he's going to be your starting quarterback going forward when he's healthy and you're not even playing him. So definitely been a big L, the past few weeks here for the New Orleans Saints. But moving on to a couple teams that, one team that I think is going to stay in this tier and one team that I think could go out of it. One team that I definitely think is going to stay in this tier and, no doubt in my mind, and it's crazy because I would have never thought this when the season started. I think the Los Angeles Rams are doomed to be staying in this tier for the rest of the season. I mean, it looks like that, Cooper Kupp, of course, has his injury. It's potential that he's not even going to come back this year. He's only really eligible to return around week 17 or something like that. But I mean, if they get to that point and the Rams are, 3-11, or that's probably not right for week 17, what do we think? Yeah, 3-13 or something, or 3-12, then, there's no point in rushing him back and bringing him back. You might as well just shut him down and save him for next season. Stafford's had a lot of concussion problems. Their run game has looked non-existent. Their offensive line is one of the worst in the league. Aaron Donald's actually set to miss his first game of his career this upcoming week. So I think the LA Rams are unfortunately doomed. I know Eric and I at the start of the year picked them, to go to the Super Bowl and win the NFC Championship game, and that's definitely looking less and less. That's definitely looking like the door on the Rams, making a repeat run at the Super Bowl or even potentially making the NFC Championship. The door looks like it's pretty shut on that. But a team I think could potentially come out of this year, it's actually two teams. I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Las Vegas Raiders could both climb out of this tier at some point. They were the two risers in this tier other than the Jaguars. The Raiders look like they're starting to get things going. I mean, Josh Jacobs has been an absolute beast all year. I mean, he's definitely been the best draft pick I've made in fantasy this year. I got him in the 8th round of our family league, and he's just been an absolute monster. Eventually they are going to get Darren Waller back. Derek Carr and Devontae Adams are definitely forming that chemistry. The defense is doing better, so I could see them. But the real ones that I think that could start coming out of this tier is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Steelers fan, but because I think the Steelers are starting to get more smart with the way they're running their offense. A lot of what was happening, when Pickett first took over, they were relying so heavily on Kenny Pickett to be, the guy to win the games for them. He was throwing it like 40 times a game, and you just can't do that with a rookie quarterback. And they're starting to get into this rhythm now. The past two games, especially against the Saints and against the Colts, they've really started to establish the run game. Like, Najee Harris has been doing well. Jaylen Warren, he's been out, but he's supposed to be coming back. Benny Snell had a really good game against the Colts. They're really starting to realize, okay, we need to try relying more heavily on the run game and not put so much pressure on our quarterback, because the defense is still good. The defense, Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt are probably like a top, I would argue that they might be the best, but they're definitely a top 3 edge rushing duo in the league now that TJ Watt is back. Just Minkah Fitzpatrick's one of the best safeties in the league. Their run defense has improved a lot this year. It's just all about, taking the pressure off Kenny Pickett, letting him settle into the NFL, letting him get comfortable. And if you can do that, then good things are on the way. George Pickens has had an absolutely ridiculous rookie season. Like, this guy, he's probably my favorite player on the team right now. Like, he makes ridiculous plays every week. Pat Freiermuth is starting to step up and be a good, reliable tight end. So I think the Steelers have a really good shot to pull themselves out of this tier. I don't think that they can same with the Raiders, too. I don't think they're going to be competing for a playoff spot this year. They would definitely have to win a lot of games down the stretch, but I definitely could see them clawing their way out of this tier going forward. So moving on now to the middle tier here. So we have at number 20, we have the Cleveland Browns, who are in the same spot they were last time. We have our biggest riser on this list this week. At number 19, the Detroit Lions. They are up 12 spots from their previous ranking, the biggest riser. At number 18, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who are down 2 spots. At number 17, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are up 4 spots. At number 16, the New England Patriots, who are down 4 spots. At number 15, the Seattle Seahawks, who are down 6 spots. At number 14, the Los Angeles Chargers, who are in the same spot they were last time. At number 13, the New York Giants, who are down 7 spots. At number 12, the New York Jets, who are up 1 spot from last time. And at number 11, the Washington Commanders, who are up 6 spots. So the team that I want to highlight in this group is, of course, our biggest riser, the Detroit Lions. And, this team honestly feels like a team that should be in the playoff hunt right now. It's just like their offense has been one of the best offenses all year, and it's crazy to think that their offense is still continuing to put up points even after trading away TJ Hawkinson, which was definitely one of the biggest head scratchers on the trade deadline for me. I was like, why are they trying to trade away, a cornerstone tight end like that? But, this offense is, Jared Goff has been playing really good. Jamal Williams has really stepped up as the new RB1 because of all the injuries to DeAndre Swift. But, DeAndre Swift is still there, and he's still contributing. He's probably their best pass-catching running back. Amon-Ra St. Brown's, he's really rebounded. He kind of had a cold stretch there in the middle of the season, but he's really rebounded, and he's performing at a high level. This offense is a legit offense. And the biggest problem for this team all season was the defense. But the defense is starting to figure it out too, and that's this Lions team. If the defense can start to perform at least at an average level, this offense can win them a lot of games, and it can make this team very scary because in my mind, the NFC playoff race is definitely, it's going to be a little bit tough because the NFC East has all these teams that are in it right now. But the Lions, given the rest of the way, if they can start ripping off some wins, because honestly, this is a team that probably should have, they've got 4 wins right now. They probably should have 6 or 7 right now. So, if they can start pulling off some wins and, ripping off some wins, if they can somehow find a way to get in the playoffs, this Detroit team is going to be very, very deadly because, the playoffs, high-powered offenses, if you can keep that going for the playoffs, and Detroit, if their defense keeps getting better, Detroit is on that right track of peaking at the right time. They're starting to build momentum to peaking. And, you want to peak at the end of the season and in the playoffs. You look at some of these other teams in this tier, like the Seahawks, who have fallen down 6 spots. The Giants, those are teams that, in my opinion, they kind of peaked early, and now they're kind of coming back down to reality. The Lions, they're on that upward trend of peaking. So, taking teams one team that I think is doomed to stay in this tier, and for me, I actually just mentioned them. I think it's going to be the Seattle Seahawks. And, Geno Smith has been having a great year, but the Seahawks, they've really started to come back down to earth the past few weeks. They're on a 2-game losing streak, and, it's like this is a team that before the season started, no one ever thought that they would do anything. They were atop the NFC West for a while, but, of course, now that's being held by the 49ers. And the thing for the Seahawks that's really going to be rough for them going forward is that they do have, their schedule is a little bit favorable. It's like kind of half favorable and kind of half not favorable. So because they still have 2 games left against the Rams, which I think they can easily win both of those, just because the Rams are a total dumpster fire right now. They do have the game against the Panthers, which, the Panthers are a bit of a scrappy team, but the Seahawks are going to be at home for that game. They're pretty unbeatable at home, but the 3 games that they have between their game against the Panthers and the season finale against the Rams, they have to play the Niners, the Chiefs, and the Jets. Those are going to be 4 really tough games, especially going against the Niners and the Chiefs. And I'm not so sure if they're going to be able to keep it up. Like I said, they're on a 2-game losing streak. They lost to the Buccaneers. They lost at home in overtime to the Raiders. And I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it going. I think Geno Smith, what he was doing at the start of the year was a little bit of an apparition. The Seahawks, they were playing against, some teams that didn't have very good defenses. They were playing against the likes of like the Lions and the Falcons and, the Cardinals and, the Chargers, who don't have a really good defense. They were playing against teams that way. It was a favorable way for them. What he did against the Broncos, not taking anything away from him in that game, because the Broncos do have a good defense. But, it's just, I don't know if the defense is going to be able to hold up and if Geno Smith's going to be able to keep the trajectory he's been going on. But one team I do see being able to climb out of this tier eventually, I do think the Washington Commanders, they have really been having a good resurgence this year. I mean, they were looking like a bit of a joke. And I will say this for the Commanders, like, they need to keep Taylor Heinicke in at quarterback. Like, forget that Carson Wentz guy. He's, it's not worth it to have him, to bring him back. Heinicke, he's the one who's winning right now. He's the one that kind of started this whole turnaround. Like, they need to keep Heinicke in at quarterback as long as possible. Like, unless he starts playing bad, like, I wouldn't even consider putting Carson Wentz in at quarterback. That's how good Heinicke's been. They're really starting to find the ground game. Like, they've got a really good running back tandem going with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. The defense has started to step up. Chase Young should be coming back here pretty soon. Terry McLaurin, consistently one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. It's like, he may not put up huge numbers every week, but when they need a play, he will make the play. And, it's like I said, the Commanders, and with what they have going forward, they do have a tough schedule going forward. I'm not sure who's scheduled this, but they have back-to-back games against the Giants. I know there's a bye week in between there, but I'm like, who's scheduled that? Like, why are you playing the same team back-to-back? They do have, like I said, they do have a tough schedule here, because then after that they got to play the 49ers, but then they get to play the Browns, so they get a nice little break, a home game against the Browns, and then a home game against the Cowboys, which I'll be very interested to see how that goes, because, the last time those two teams squared off, the Cowboys pretty much dominated and manhandled them. This is a different Washington team now that I think could definitely stand up to the Cowboys, and potentially it's all going to be how well do they do in those 2 games against the Giants. That's going to tell me how good I think they can be against the Dallas Cowboys. And so moving up to our top 10 teams, definitely a little bit of movement here at the top. There's a new number 1 team. So from the bottom, we have at number 10, the Baltimore Ravens. They're in the same spot that they were in the last power rankings. At number 9, we have the Tennessee Titans, down 2 spots. At number 8, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who are up 7 spots. At number 7, we have the San Francisco 49ers, who are up 4 spots. At number 6, we've got the Minnesota Vikings, down 1 spot. At number 5, the Buffalo Bills, who are down 3 spots. At number 4, the Dallas Cowboys, who are in the same spot they were last time. At number 3, the Miami Dolphins, who are up 5 spots. At number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles, down 1 spot. And at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs, up 2 spots in their first appearance at number 1 this year. The team I want to highlight from this group is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that, this team has looked different ever since Jimmy Garoppolo has taken over at quarterback. This team, they had kind of gotten off to like a weird looking start. Trey Lance, of course, he's definitely more of a, running quarterback. He's not really a pocket passer whatsoever. And then they had the game that they lost to Denver where, Garoppolo ran out of the back of the end zone. But, really ever since then, this team has looked like a legit Super Bowl threat. Really, since the loss to the Chiefs, they've ripped off 4 straight wins. They haven't always been against like great teams. They played the Rams and the Saints and the Cardinals and the Chargers, but they have really looked like I said, a legit Super Bowl threat coming out of the NFC. They look like the best team in the NFC West, in my opinion. Like in my mind, they've surpassed the Seahawks when it comes to that respect. The defense is just as good as ever. This defense is, it's a top 5 defense in the league. They get consistent pressure on the quarterback. They make life miserable for them on offense. I mean, just pick your poison when it comes to weapons on offense. Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. I mean, you can't go wrong with really any of those options. McCaffrey has really been, it's like that in my mind is really what also elevates this 49ers team because Garoppolo, he's not a guy who's going to be, throwing for 300 yards. So having a really good running back, a really good receiving running back is key for this 49ers team. That's what made them so good. The year that they did go to the Super Bowl, they had really good play out of their running backs. At the time, I think they had Mostert and they had I'm forgetting who the other guy they had at that time was, but I know like they had Raheem Mostert, they had someone else, and of course like you still have Deebo Samuel, who's kind of got that like hybrid sort of wide receiver running back role that he plays. He can play out of the backfield. You can run all sorts of plays with Deebo Samuel. This Niners team in my mind is legit, and they got better when they got Garoppolo, and Garoppolo is continuing to get better. It's really going to be interesting to see what happens with this Niners team. Like, okay, if they go and make a deep playoff run, okay, so what's the quarterback situation going to be like? Because, I mean, they were committed at the start of this year. Like, okay, like Trey Lance is the guy. We traded up to get him. He's going to be the starter. He's the guy. No question about it. And now, like I said, if they go on a deep playoff run, those questions are going to open up again, like for like the 3rd straight year, basically. Is Jimmy G the guy or is Trey Lance the guy? In my opinion, I would go with Jimmy G. It's just like, Lance really didn't show all that much in those couple of games, and this is now going to be basically he'll be going into his 3rd season only having, started 2 games and only really having played like 4 total games. So, I don't know. It's going to definitely be interesting to see how it goes. But as for a team that I could see falling out of this tier, it might be a little cliche to go with the team that's at the bottom, but I could definitely see the Baltimore Ravens falling out of this tier. They seem to have taken a little bit of a step back. The Bengals, in my mind, are definitely back to being the best team in the AFC North. Lamar Jackson has really cooled off since his blazing start to the year. I have him on my fantasy team, actually, in our family league, and yeah, he really hasn't been putting up the numbers. It's like the Ravens are they're still finding ways to win, but, he just, like I said, he hasn't been putting up the numbers that you're used to from Lamar Jackson. When you have him on your fantasy team, you're thinking, like, with Lamar Jackson, you're thinking, okay, this guy, he's like a lock to get, like 30 points, something like that, like a rushing touchdown, a few passing touchdowns here or there. You're looking for big things out of him, but the Ravens, their offense looked really anemic in that game against the Panthers. They lost to the Jaguars. Before that they had 3 straight wins, but they came against like a home game against the Browns that they only won by 3. They only managed to beat the Bucs by 5, and then against the Saints. So the Ravens in this defense has been looking really sus too. I know Zach said, he said this on a previous episode. He really doesn't like the Ravens secondary. He really doesn't believe in them at all. So, it's definitely interesting to see how it goes going forward. Like if Lamar Jackson can recapture, his other form, I definitely could see the Ravens competing with the Bengals and potentially, doing something. But they just kind of look like, like they're 7-4, but it's just like, they're kind of that 7-4 team that you look at and you're like, they don't scare me at all. They're not a threat to me. Not like some of the other teams in the AFC, like the Chiefs and the Dolphins and the Bills and the Bengals and the Titans, where you're like, oh man, those are scary. Like the Ravens, you just kind of look at them like, not really scared of them. But for a team that I definitely think is going to stay up here, is that, I was skeptical of this team, at the start of the year, and I was still skeptical, but I actually think the Minnesota Vikings have definitely earned their spot up here in the top 10, and I think they're going to be staying up here. I still have concerns about the defensive side of the ball for the Vikings, but I mean, their offense, Kirk Cousins is playing out of his mind. Justin Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. They made that trade for TJ Hawkinson. Adam Thielen's still playing at a good level. Dalvin Cook's still playing at a high level. So I definitely think the Minnesota Vikings are here to stay. They've pretty much at this point, like unless they utterly collapse, they've pretty much locked up the NFC North, with the struggles that the Packers have been having. It's like they're 9-2 and second place is 4-7 right now. So, they virtually locked up a home playoff game and the division title. And, the NFC is definitely wide open. Outside of the Vikings, the only teams in the NFC to me that really look like Super Bowl threats right now are the Eagles and the 49ers. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys can also have consideration up there, but I mean, the NFC in my mind is wide open. It's really like a 3, possibly 4 team race right now. So, it's not like the AFC where I could see a lot of teams potentially competing. The NFC is very top heavy with, the Cowboys, the Vikings, the Eagles, and the Niners. So, definitely going to be interesting to see going forward how they do. But I think they could compete. Just Kirk Cousins, he finally won a primetime game. That was huge. That was always like his big thing. He couldn't win primetime games. He won the Thanksgiving primetime game against the Patriots, and maybe that'll give him the confidence going forward to, play at a high level in these crucial games. Because that's kind of what's always failed the Vikings in the past, was just the play of Kirk Cousins in the crucial games. And he's been getting it done so far this year. So I'm definitely interested to see how it goes for them in the future. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit the like button. Leave your comments down below. What do you think of my rankings? Do you agree with them? Disagree with them? Do you think someone is way too high? Do you think someone is way too low? Make sure you let me know. We will be coming back with the lock board on Friday. I know we didn't have an episode last week. We did make picks last week. I posted them to Twitter, so we did make picks. We didn't, skip a week, but we skipped a week of recording because of Thanksgiving. So when we come out with the episode on Friday, it'll be a recap of the previous 2 weeks, and then we'll make fresh picks going forward. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And until then, I will see you guys next time.